We have reached the Christmas holiday, and look who's in first place. It's the Vancouver Canucks. Trevor Beggs of Locked On Canucks joins us to talk about that and all things Canucks coming up on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Canucks, Trevor Beggs, and Merry Christmas, first of all, Trevor. And look who's number one. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it. Merry Christmas to you, Gil. Merry Christmas to you tuning into this show right now. And what a Christmas gift. I'm just, we're getting to the end of the year, and I'm just thinking about how far the Canucks have come, right? You look at January 1st, and, the Canucks are one of the worst teams in the league. The Boudreau rumors are swirling. And not even 12 months later, here the Canucks are, first place in the NHL standings at Christmas. It's quite the turnaround. I mean, I was certainly bullish on this team being a playoff team heading into the season, but first place in the league, I can't say I had it on my 2023 bingo card.
So what has been the biggest difference? I mean, you're leading the league in goals scored right now, best record in the league, getting it done really in almost every facet of the game. What has been the difference between January 1st last year and Christmas Day this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably two words, right? It's Rick Tocchet. And so funny how, back again in January of 2023, no one was really on board with the Tocchet hiring, it seemed, in Vancouver or even outside of Vancouver, right? Everyone was just aghast at how the Canucks treated Boudreau and the whole way that whole scenario played out. But lo and behold, I think Tocchet's done a fabulous job of towing the line between being a bit of a hard ass, for lack of a better term, and being a good players coach too. I think he lets his stars play. But you can tell this team is playing with more structure. This team was very loosey-goosey under Boudreau. The positive feel-good coach, those positive vibes only lasted for a few months there. But the team's playing with more structure. And then it's kind of been a culmination of a few things, right? Like Thatcher Demko's back to being elite, which was kind of happening towards the tail end of last season. JT Miller looked like a different player under Tocchet than he did under Boudreau. Now all of a sudden you have these new forward additions who are gelling with the team. Lafferty, Höglander, Mikheiv's at full health, right? So, and then they overhauled the defense as well, right? I think the defense is still a weak spot on this team, but they're league average instead of the worst group in the NHL. So, when you're in first place in the NHL, it's not just one thing going right. It's definitely a number of things, and that's certainly the case for the Vancouver Canucks.
Got to ask you about Brock Boeser. I mean, 24 goals right now. Kind of a Cy Young Award candidate, though, with only 14 assists. But what has made him so dangerous this year?
I think it's just he's going to the net more. And we saw this last year with Brock Boeser, where people were saying, obviously, people were down on his game, but you looked at his underlying profile, he was still scoring at a first-line rate. It was just his points were coming from playmaking more than shooting and scoring. So it was a different Brock Boeser we saw. Boeser was also horrid defensively last season, both under Boudreau and when Tocchet came in. But I think the two main things in Boeser's game that have changed is that he's back to being a good defensive player. People don't really think of Brock Boeser that way, but he's always been a pretty good defensive player. Pretty smart in his own end, good at getting the puck up the ice. And the second thing is he's just going to the net more. You look at, of those 24 goals, the majority of them have come with right within the crease. If you don't believe me, you can go check out that NHL Edge data. That's some pretty neat stuff. But yeah, it's not just the, when people think of Brock Boeser, they think of this sniper that just comes down off the rush, lets off the crazy good wrist shot. He's still doing that on occasion, but a lot of his goals are coming from 5 feet of the blue paint.
Thatcher Demko, you mentioned. Casey DeSmith also getting the job done as the backup. In fact, his statistics in goals against average and save percentage are almost identical to Demko's. What has been, I mean, obviously you mentioned the structure defensively in front of them, but the goaltending has been very consistent this year.
Yeah, and again, when you look at the Canucks kind of underlying profile, they're a league average team defensively. Now they're getting outshot in a lot of games, which is cause for concern. I know we're hearing all this stuff about, oh, it's just PDO, they're just getting lucky. But if you watch the games, the Canucks really are doing a good job of limiting those high danger chances. A lot of the shots are coming from the outside. There's not a lot of like grade A 5 alarm chances coming from the slot. I mean, there are some, but it's just one of the situations where the environment is easier for both Demko and DeSmith. And sometimes when that environment crumbles, they are stepping up and making the saves, right? Which, again, I'm not going to say the dreaded R word here in terms of PDO, but yeah, both guys are playing phenomenally. And I think one crazy stat that I pulled and I told DeSmith about after the game in Minnesota earlier this month was DeSmith was actually the first Canucks backup goaltender in over 6 years to record a shutout. It's been 6 years since the backup goalies recorded a shutout in Vancouver, which is crazy. It was either Markstrom or Demko as the starter for a 6-year stretch. So actually, the last guy to do it before DeSmith was Anders Nielsen back in the fall of 2017. He did that before DeSmith even played his first NHL game. And here is DeSmith. I think he's a 32-year-old veteran in this league. So yeah, just a wild season in Vancouver where lots of bizarre things like that are happening.
All right, let's nitpick a little bit because it's not all perfect here. What's going on with the penalty kill? Because they're 23rd in the league in that department.
It's funny because we've heard it from Rick talking the coaching staff where they keep saying the penalty kill is better than the numbers lead you to believe. And I think that was true for a time where they were just allowing 5-on-3 goals. But overall, I still see a very similar penalty kill to last year. I think the main difference is that the goaltending is better. I think the Canucks had some of the worst goaltending shorthanded in the league last season, on top of allowing all these chances. And now it's, they're still allowing the chances, but the goaltending is stepping up. So they brought in different personnel. I think there have been some positive signs with the past 10 games. JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, obviously, they've been putting up the shorthanded points. Last year, I think they had like 8 shorthanded points each. I think they each have a shorthanded goal this season, but neither of them have been stellar on the PK. One guy who's really looked good on the PK recently has been Teddy Bluger. So we've seen Teddy Bluger's ice time increase on the PK. He's making plays there. So I think they're still trying to figure it out personnel-wise. And even when you hear former NHLers talk about PK, a lot of it is there's strategy that goes into it, but a lot of it is just the personnel and can they do the job. As much as Miller and Pettersson have the flash, they don't look like they can do the job as well as a guy like Teddy Bluger. So yeah, it's still a bit of an Achilles heel, but it's been trending at least in a better direction the past 10 games or so.
Got to ask you about Quinn Hughes. I mean, a plus 28 right now in plus minus, second on the team with 44 points. What makes him so special?
I think it's just skating, right? His edge work is just like something I've never seen before. And you're starting to see some other NHLers kind of mimic him a bit almost. Like I see a guy like Sean Dursey. He reminds me a lot of Quinn Hughes. I see a Jordan Spence in LA. He skates a bit like Quinn Hughes, but Quinn Hughes just has some of the best edge work I've ever seen live. And he combines that with just head up puck skills. And again, he's added that shot to his arsenal now. He's so often looking to shoot, which is just something he's never really done before. Now you see Quinn Hughes walking the blue line and he's walking down the wing and getting a scoring chance, So it's a different player. And the fact that he has 10 goals at Christmas, I'm not sure if I would have believed he would have had 10 goals the entire season this year. So again, a sign that things are going well in Vancouver, but he's done the work to get there, right? He's talked time and time again about working on a shot that not even just last summer, but the last couple of years. And it's finally starting to pay off for him here. And yeah, I hope he's in that Norris contention or even the Norris winner at the end of the season, but Cale Makar might have something to say about that.
Possibly. So what is the biggest key to maintaining this lead, to have a strong finish and be ready for the playoffs with all guns blazing?
Yeah, for me, Gil, I honestly think this is going to sound strange, but I actually think it's the offense. And I know that sounds weird because they lead the league in goals right now. But again, they're bottom 5 in shots. They're bottom half of the league in chances generated. I look at this defense right now, and I think this defense is probably playing to the max their potential. And I know Hughes and Hronek were better earlier in the season, but overall, you look at behind them, Cole, Zadorov, Myers, Susie. I mean, sure, they got big guys, but you got a lot of slow guys that can't move the puck that well. So I really think the defense is near their peak at being league average. So I do think if possible, you add another defenseman to that group. That would help things out. But offensively, I just think they need to generate more. Like if the goaltending stays where it's at, and I don't see any reason to believe it won't, other than the fact that goaltending is weird. But if the goaltending stays near the top of the league, the defense is average. You just need the offense to generate more chances because eventually the shooting luck is going to run out. And I know the Canucks play a game where they're not necessarily trying to go quantity, they're trying to go quality, but they do need to control the puck a bit more and keep the puck more in the offensive zone. Because again, if that doesn't happen, I do think the regression monster. Oh, I said that R word. Sorry, the regression monster is going to come and hit them at some point.
All right. Well, Trevor, why don't you tell us where people can find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
You can find me on social media at Trev Beggs, and the podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, is Locked On Canucks. It's been a lot of fun. My co-host Kyle Bowden and I took over on March 1st, and we've gone from 300 subscribers to 1.3 subscribers. So I didn't realize that there were 1,000 people that wanted to listen to us talk about hockey, but we're very, very grateful, especially reflecting here at Christmas. So Merry Christmas to all the Locked On listeners. Not just myself, but Gil, all the hosts. We love all of you for tuning in to us.
All right, Trevor, thanks. Always a pleasure, and Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.